Defining the cloud. A lot of companies want to put the cloud into their marketing right now. And because of that, there's being a lot of confusion about what it means to have something be in the cloud. Now, my definition is very straightforward, and that is that for something to be in the cloud, the consumer has to be unaware of the hardware that it's being clouded to. For example, Hotmail, Gmail are in the cloud to the consumer. There may be physical machines up there that are running it, but to the user, they're just logging into the cloud and accessing their email from anywhere that they want. They don't have to worry about the hardware, they don't have to worry about the software, they don't have to think about anything. They just know their stuff is available all the time and it lives out in a very nebulous place. Now, the same is true when you're hosting your website in the cloud. If you are running on a cloud platform, you shouldn't have to think about the hardware at all. And this is not just what hardware are you running on or the maintenance of that hardware, but how many hardwares are you running? For example, I don't consider Amazon's AWS to be in the cloud. Because you have to be aware of what configuration of every instance of your servers are, you are very aware of the hardware units that are taking place underneath it. Now, when you run on Google App Engine, however, you have no idea what the hardware is, and you don't really even have much control over how much hardware you're using. Now, a lot of people might argue with me on this, but I consider EC2 and Amazon's SQL hosting services to be cloud-like because they are charged by transaction and usage, but the hardware has been abstracted from you. You don't have to be aware of how much RAM have you allocated, how much CPU have you allocated. You get billed by the resource. Now, to me, that is cloud. And to really be cloud, something has to scale basically to near infinity. So, like the Hotmail, there is a cap of 5 gigs or something like that, but you can expand beyond that and you're not going to outscale the cloud that you're using. The same is true of Google App Engine and Amazon's AWS and Microsoft's Azure. You can scale as much as you want within certain very small limitations. But if you're on AWS, there are limits to how much scale you can have because the cloud is not abstracted from you enough. You still have a 100 megabit port between your virtual machine or your instance and the database that you're talking to and things like that. When you're working on something like Google App Engine, that has been abstracted to the point that the connection between the instance and the data store may be limited, but the total amount of data available via the data store is unlimited. So if you wanted to scale an application to Facebook-sized scale, you could do that on Google App Engine. You cannot currently do that on Amazon's AWS, nor can you do that on Microsoft's Azure. This may sound a bit like a commercial for Google App Engine, and I don't really mean it to be that way. It just happens to be that by the strictest definition of cloud, Google App Engine is the only platform that allows you to build your platform on a cloud. Your users could put their stuff in the cloud on any of those platforms. So if you're offering cloud services to your customers, as long as you scale large enough that they never hit their limits, and as long as they don't have to be aware of what the service is, to them, the internet and the cloud can be pretty synonymous. So consumer cloud and business clouds have the same definition, but they get to be applied differently as a result of what the user expects and what the business expects. And so hopefully I haven't confused it too much, but it really comes down to when you are putting your data into the cloud or your services into the cloud, the last person to use or consume those resources has to be unaware of the hardware and the scaling issues. It simply needs to be I paid this much, so I got this much service. And they shouldn't have to do any of the administration of choosing the scaling or managing how much hardware they're consuming. So, for consumers, email, anything can be put into the cloud. That pretty much simply means it lives out on the internet. For businesses, it means that you don't have to pay for a network admin or an IT admin in order to manage those services.